Fourth and final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Nelson, and we are going to talk about the Rookie of the Year and exactly like how the Rookie of the Year usually like boils down to, who ends up winning the award, why they end up winning the award, and why I personally think I believe that it's going to be Victor who wins the award. And I'm going to explain why I think he's going to win the award and why usually players like him would win the award. Now, there's a lot of talk this year about who wins the Rookie of the Year, though. Like, even though like it should be, everyone would think it would flat out be Victor Wembanyama. It's very surprising how a lot of people say that the Rookie of the Year isn't a flat out Victor. He leads all rookies in every single category except for assists. So this is also with a lot of people thinking that he doesn't get the ball enough. So he's leading in points, rebounds, steals, blocks, all of those categories. The only stat that he's not leading in is assists amongst rookies. That is absolutely impressive. Other people who argue that it isn't him, however, go back to the other giant that plays on the Oklahoma City Thunder, Chet. He is 7'2", and he is almost as skinny as Kevin Durant. They're both tall, and they're both defensive anchors, Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. What separates the both of them in terms of voting and who people pick is efficiency and volume stats. Now, Chet is the much more efficient player between the two of them. There's no doubt about it. And he also gets a lot more wins than Victor does, no doubt about it. Victor Wembanyama plays on the San Antonio Spurs. Right now, they're currently one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. And Chet Holmgren plays on the Oklahoma City Thunder, and right now they're looking to be one of the best teams in the NBA right now. So it definitely shows a difference as to what they're playing for and why they struggle or why they succeed or why their shooting percentages are the way that they are. If you think about it, Victor Wembanyama being on a team that is rebuilding and on a team that is not necessarily where it needs to be, not necessarily the best, and on a team that doesn't necessarily give him the ball when most people feel like he should, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. So it makes sense how his efficiency numbers aren't going to be as high as Chet Holmgren, who is on a system built with draft picks similar to him, with skill sets as good as him, being able to move the ball and move and operate an offense as good as him. Like, all of that is just playing into the role that he has to do on his team. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that the team is the reason why he's efficient. Obviously, he has to hit the shots, but Chet might be the much more efficient player, but Victor has the better total stats and the total numbers. So the efficiency leans towards Chet, but the total stats lean towards Victor. With this in mind, however, Victor also gets a lot more talk than any rookie this year. It's most likely that it's going to be he's most likely the one that's going to be winning this award simply because of how many people are talking about him. Like, he's 7'4", and he can easily dunk the ball without even trying. Why wouldn't you talk about him? It's a similar story to LeBron and Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony was the best player on a mediocre team that made it to the playoffs at the Denver Nuggets. He had better stats, a little bit better efficiency. Wasn't as popular as LeBron, however. And LeBron had better counting stats, much more hype around him, And because of that, he ended up with the Rookie of the Year award in the end. A lot of people believe that Carmelo Anthony deserved that award over LeBron James. It's like me so far. He is without a doubt the Rookie of the Year in the games that I've seen him play in. So I don't believe that Chet deserves this Rookie of the Year over Victor Wembanyama. Victor might not shoot the ball that well, but it's also not like he gets the best looks that he can. So, as mentioned previously, his teammates don't necessarily give him the ball. That's because if you watch some of his games, he'll have wide open cuts to the basket, and if you throw the ball high enough, you can get it to a spot where only he can catch the ball. And once he catches that ball, it's game over. He's scoring that no matter what. But even with that in mind, some of these players still don't give him the ball, which is absolutely insane to me, because how could you miss someone that is that tall and built like that? So even with that, however, I still think he has this award on lockdown. I don't think Chet is playing bad either, but he has a great team, great picks. So it's not like he's the one that's leading the team. Shai is, as I mentioned before, he's third in MVP voting. So if Shai's third in MVP voting on the team that Chet is, don't you think that Shai has something to do with it? Victor, like I mentioned before, how Victor's on a really bad team. He doesn't necessarily have the picks or the talent to support him as well as Chet Holmgren does. Now, maybe towards the trade deadline, that'll change depending on who they get. DeJounte Murray. Maybe, who knows. But don't necessarily think that winning should be taken into account when you're talking about Rookie of the Year. It's not the same as MVP. Because when you're an MVP, you are like essentially required to get wins, because that's how a player is valued. Like, you bring value to a franchise by bringing the franchise its wins. So if you're not getting wins, you're not giving them value. Even though Joel Embiid had 70 on him, Victor Wembanyama still had 33. Now, that's still 70 points on his head, but 33 isn't that bad. Leading the rookies in every stat except for assist also isn't that bad, and that's impressive no matter what anyone says. So I believe this Rookie of the Year is a lock for Victor Wembanyama, the same way how this MVP, as of right now, is a lock for Joel Embiid. Now, the only reason why I say for now is because with Joel Embiid, I think, and that MVP, I believe it could be either Jokic or Embiid that ends up pulling away with that award. Both of them are playing great, so I believe either of them could win that award. But for Rookie of the Year, as I mentioned before, I don't necessarily think wins are going to play much into account when you look at total stats. And as of right now, Victor Wembanyama is leading in that department. So that is the end of our fourth segment, and thus the end of our live stream and the end of our podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Be sure to tune in once again at 12:30 tomorrow, where once again talk about update us on some of these games that happen, update us on the news that's going to go down, and be sure once again to remember to tip and to donate to the link below in the ticker. As you can see, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.